7th author that I have signed.
Congratulations. Hopefully one of the funniest.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate the support.
I can't wait to read it.
Welcome to our Protect the Desert night, where we are celebrating our beautiful Southern California deserts. And the book release for our bartender, Barret. Barret's worked here for the last 10 years and has released 2 books while working for us. We are extremely proud to be hosting this. We also did a beer release for the Beer de Mars, which is a desert botanical beer. You can get that on tap today. And the proceeds, portion of the proceeds tonight will be going to the, the Mojave Desert Land Trust. And we are really excited for that to be a sponsor. I think that they are coming out. All good. Welcome, Barret, to the stage.
Okay. Thank you for coming out, everyone. Is the audio okay? You guys gonna be able to hear me? Okay. All right. Yeah, so I see tons of people here. I know I'm meeting tons of new people tonight. There's old friends here, really old friends. It's an extreme honor and delight to see so many people out here to celebrate this totally weird, random book that I wrote that I started accidentally as a wedding favor for a wedding that never happened, that was killed by COVID, that was going to be in Joshua Tree. And the research was so weird and surprising, it just kept expanding, and it eventually turned into a small, strange book. So I'm really happy to have you all here. I want to thank everyone at Wandering Aengus Press, Joe McCabe Johnson, Tom Larson especially. Thanks to Holly as well for helping me get the word out on this strange little book. Thanks to the Mojave Desert Land Trust for all their conservation work, for agreeing to do this event with a very questionable author. Anton Lieberman at the Autry Museum of the West. If you saw that little reel earlier, that was created by Anton. He allowed me to borrow that. If you haven't been to the Autry Museum of the West, it's sick. You should go. It's in Griffith Park. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. And a big thanks, obviously, to everyone at Angel City Brewery for hosting this event, putting up with my weird conversation, my bad Sonos radio stations on Saturdays when there's 400 people in here. Really appreciate you having me. I haven't worked here 10 years. It's only been like 3 or 4 months. Thank you especially to Christina. The scientific name for the Joshua tree is Yucca brevifolia, the short-leaved yucca, brevity, the short-leaved yucca. And as it says in the dedication to this book, these brief leaves are yours. Yuck. Okay, so I'm Barret. I write nonfiction. I wrote this new weird book, YUCK. I write weird nonfiction. Weird nonfiction. I've been calling it that more and more over the past year. It sounds kind of lame, like weird, like weird, bro. Like he's weird, you're weird, she's weird. But when I say weird, I'm not saying weird because I'm weird or my topics are weird. The word weird is a very spooky old term. It's thought to derive from the Proto-Indo-European root word wert, W-E-R-T, wert, which meant to twist or to wind. So the word wind comes from wert. And if I ask you right now, how did you wind up here? Where will we all wind up? If I say Nick turned up all of a sudden, or I lost my keys and then they suddenly turned up. These examples give you a hint of what weird actually means, or what it used to mean. Weird originally meant, in some crazy old German tongue, something like fate. The weird, or what was weird, in the older sense, was that which comes. Weird are the things that arrive wayward, sliding in unbidden, unknown, appearing inexplicably, and often bearing some kind of meaning. As if somehow sent, directed, dispatched from somewhere beyond our perception, driven by fate. Weird entered the modern English 400 years ago in Shakespeare's Macbeth, which you might have heard of. He called the three witches in that play the Weird Sisters, and he spelled weird not the way we do, but with a Y, W-Y-R-D. But why the hell am I telling you any of this? All the nonfiction I write, all my investigations, they're somehow weird. Things seem to sync up too neatly. People and places turn up where they should not, suggesting strange, hidden meanings, things that have no business connecting, that have no relation whatsoever. Wind up in the same place, often or always in the Mojave Desert, creating this brief, flickering feeling that there may be something more going on in our world than we are yet aware of. Something working beneath the surface, across time, pointing to something deeper and more mysterious, underpinning our mundane, workaday material world. I don't know how I stumble onto these things or why they keep finding me, but it's these wayward, weird discoveries that drive me to create. As the German essayist W.G. Sebald once put it, writing is about discovering things hitherto unseen. Otherwise, there's no point in the process. It was a discovery of something hitherto unseen that initially launched this book. That discovery was the truly dazzling extent to which human beings utterly fucking despised the Joshua Tree when they first found it. White Europeans wanted it wiped off the face of the planet. For them, it was an abortion, a malformation, an abomination. It was God's most despised creation, literally. Very much in contrast to the way we view it and treat it today at the most photographed and most popular national park in the country. It's very strange. This discovery shocked me. It made no sense. And one of the first things that happened alongside that discovery was I found a book by Deanne Stillman. Her brilliant Joshua Tree, Desolation Tango, mentions that Native Americans regarded the Joshua Tree as a staircase, a bridge, somehow to another world, to heaven. And it was this strange insight that offered me the first metaphorical foothold, paving a bridge forward into the pages that would become this book, YUCK. I could not have written this book without her book. And while we're talking about bridges, we might as well mention that this giant old warehouse was over 100 years ago owned by a dude who invented steel cabling and wire rope, actually. His name was J.A. Roebling, and he remains the greatest bridge builder in American history. This is a historically protected J.A. Roebling building. Interesting. So yeah, that slide when you walk in, that spiral thing, that was for sending down bales of wire, rope, or steel cabling, not for human consumption. You'll find this history referenced in one of the best-selling beers on tap tonight, the Bridge Builder Hazy IPA. But you shouldn't drink that. You should try instead the Beer to Mars, desert botanical beer, flavored with sage and juniper for subtle, soothing notes of Mojave sunset. Quite unlike the hideous aroma of the Joshua Tree, which we will now explore. All right, it's a difficult book to read from because it samples a bunch of historical texts that I found digging through the dirt, tons of voices, forgotten botanical writing, travelers, scribbles from pilgrims. They all accrue in this expanding sort of prose poem that presents an apocalyptic picture of the American West in Southern California. So it's very uplifting. I hope you enjoy it. Are you guys still hearing me? It's okay? Yeah? It's okay? Yeah? Could be louder? No? What do you think, Mark? A little louder? Tiny louder? Louder without feedback? Is that a little better? No. Okay. All right. Native Americans referred to it by different names, but for all of them, it was the same. A bridge. Sovarampi, the southern Paiute, said. Umpu intoned the western Shoshone. The Kuya called it Humwichawa. The Spanish, traveling overland from Mexico, did not see it as a connecting force, but more an inconvenience likely to sever the leather straps of saddlebags. They likened its stiff, sharp leaves to swords. Izote de desierto, they said when they saw them. Desert dagger. Federal Western land surveyors first stumbled upon them in 1844. The daggers did make an impression. The famed pathfinder, Captain John C. Fremont, wrote that their stiff and ungraceful form makes them, to the traveler, the most repulsive tree in the vegetable kingdom. That's a very famous quote. Fremont called them yucca trees. Until recently, scientists assumed they were a member of the lily family. This despite the fact that some grew over 40 feet tall, lived 800 years, and unlike the lily, produced flowers that were greenish-white and ill-smelling, according to an early observer. They are not at all attractive, Mary Parsons concurred in 1900 in The Wild Flowers of California. Edna Brush Perkins wrote in 1922, they were dull, lead-colored things. They have a soiled white color, Parsons added, with a disagreeable, fetid odor. Francis M. Foltz wrote in 1919 that it is well that you view the flowers from some little distance, for they give off a strong, fetid odor that is exceedingly disagreeable. Nathaniel Britton, his 1908 North American trees claim that the petals are unpleasantly odorous. Flowers white, rather ill-smelling, Charles Francis Saunders scribbled in 1917. It is a musty odor, similar to that of a toadstool, another commentator offered. The horrible smell, moaned a back page of Scientific American. And still, none claimed to know the precise origin of the word yucca. After the putrid petals bloom, they wither and fall away and leave behind a hard fruit that somewhat resembles green bananas, Lou V. Chapin noted in 1894, although they are the last thing in vegetable rankness. The English-born traveler, Joseph Smeaton Chase, agreed. The fruit was just a cluster of nubby pods, bitter and useless. The Indians are said to have eaten its pods in times of famine, a writer from Land of Sunshine quipped around 1890, and they must indeed have been near to starvation. Recent found samples of fossilized dung persuaded several scientists that at least one dismal animal tolerated the bitter berries, or at least it tried to for a time. The giant Shasta ground sloth vanished into extinction around the dawn of the Holocene epoch, about 10,000 years ago. In AD 1853, an optimistic railroad reporter, one Gwyn Harris Heap, likened the site of the repulsive trees to armed sentries guarding a remote desert sanctum. Heap offered an appropriately biblical name, the Palmyra cactus, after the renowned ruins of that ancient oasis of desert trade. But the camel caravans of the Silk Road never crossed through the Mojave. The railroad was never built, and the name did not stick. The promised land lay elsewhere. In 1854, the famed botanist John Torrey received a parcel of unknown leaves. He read in them a relative of Dracaena draco, a plant long famed as a source of dragon's blood, sangre de drago in ancient Rome, a medicinal powder especially prized by Egyptian priests during mummification. Torrey supplied the scientific name Yucca draconis, the dragon yucca. Wind of such wondrous taxonomic advancements, however, failed to reach the ears of Western wagon trains. In an apparent attempt at gallows humor, Starving desert travelers often referred to the snarling dragons and their fetid flesh, not as yuccas, but cabbage. Heavens ahead, a good Lord has bequeathed us a kindly orchard of giant cabbage trees. No one actually said that, but that's fine. A folio of dagger-like leaves landed on the desk of botanist George Engelmann in 1871. He determined that Mr. Torrey had erred. Neither impressed nor repulsed, he named them plain. Yucca brevifolia, the short-leaved yucca. Not persuaded, in 1877, the landscape photographer Carlton Watkins named his lonely subject Yucca draconis, with an unusual subtitle, Paper Tree. And yet still further names prevailed across the Mojave. As Chapin notes in 1894, the yucca, which the people in one corner of the desert call the monkey puzzle tree because it would puzzle a monkey to climb anything so bristling, is in harmony with the landscape of its habitat. By which he meant to say that the trees appear to endure an especially tortured existence. Nothing the desert produces expresses it better than the unhappy growth of the tree yucca, Mary Austin wrote in 1903 in The Land of Little Rain. The poet Charlotte M. Hall agreed. In 1911, she described them as a flagellant brotherhood, forced to stern penance for old wrongs, gray pilgrims without pouch or staff, or dust-stained robe, or cockle shell. Seek ye the path to some lost shrine, here in this desert, grim as hell. In the title of her poem, she referred to the trees by what was then their ascendant common name. Not palmyras or yucca trees, but yucca palms. While doubts about their proper name persisted, consensus assembled around their right appearance. A single adjective seemed to suffice. A small, grotesque tree, submitted Charles Saunders. A grotesque, narrow-leaved evergreen, ventured Little. A small tree with grotesque branching, Johnson said. Clumsy branches, added Saunders. A grotesque tree, yucca, wrote Perkins. At high elevations and extremely harsh sites, it grows in grotesque shapes, continued Johnson. It is doubtful if the world produces more grotesque objects in the way of trees, Foltz wrote. Perkins expounded, grotesque arms like monsters in pain. One can scarcely find a term of ugliness that is not apt for this plant, Chase concluded. They didn't just offend the eye, they upset the spirit. A billion crimson sunsets lay buried in the deepest blood memory of humankind. What is beauty or art but an attempt to alleviate an awe that crushes even inside the womb? What is life but a brief sail, flapping between two infinite nights? The reddened spectacle of dusk spurs us on. There must be another side at the edge of the planet where the sun goes down and nothing ever dies. To be wistful is to be westful. And yet, after months of grueling effort, early desert pilgrims discovered in California not an enchanted land to the right hand of the Indies, very near the region of the terrestrial paradise, as Garcia de Montalvo prophesied from Castile, Spain in 1500. The cavalcades did not debouch onto smooth beaches from sheer barrancas that buttressed the castle walls of the Amazonian queen, Calafia, as Hernan Cortez assured Charles V he was certain of finding a few days' sail to the northwest in 1542. They found not the Straits of Anian, for which the crown dispatched Cabrillo to California, nor the 7 cities of Cibola, assigned to Coronado. No quantity of gold fit to pave El Dorado lay in cold streams fed from melting alpine snows, at least not in the Southland. Instead, in this hard and parched corner of California, Califomo in Catalan translates to hot furnace. They crossed a murderous sand packed with God's most despised creation, a horrid flora dredged from the rough drafts of Dante, a nightmare hallucination so unseemly even Hieronymus Bosch declined to paint it in his triptychs. Instead, they encountered a sudden heinous scarecrow, hundreds and thousands of them arrayed across the baking plains, like strange apotropaic pillars, relics of the crazed and obsessive cult work of some desperate race, long since doomed and reduced to dust. Nothing in the vegetable world is more unprepossessing than this scarecrow, all knees and elbows with handfuls and mouthfuls of daggers. That's an actual quote from somebody. These are all quotes. Were they meant to ward off evil? To frighten away invaders? The heathen unclean? The faithful and hypocrite? I don't know. Were the pilgrims actually stumbling toward paradise? Or did a further hell await behind the forest, beyond the claws of yucca fronds? A landscape filled with yucca brevifolia has a nightmare effect, even in broad daylight. At the witching hour, it can be almost infernal. So concluded California Desert Trails in 1919. Fittingly, the infernal tree resisted fire. The spongy fibrous wood was useless for ordinary purposes, wrote Saunders. A curious coarse fibrous substance, Charles Shin wrote in 1891, of little value for firewood. When it burned, the acrid smoke choked the lungs, just as the dry seeds of its insipid fruit spoiled the palate. Such facts prove not merely unhelpful, but more so horrifying to the Christian mind of the westward questing pilgrim. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, God himself commanded. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle. Behold, I give you every herb-bearing seed, and every tree. But what were the Argonauts, risking life and limb to break new ground in God's country, as Bono might be heard to sing on the album The Joshua Tree, supposed to do with these sudden, damnable trees that would bend to no purpose? The traveler crossing the Mojave Desert has her curiosity violently aroused by certain fantastic tree forms, weird, demoniacal, wrote Mary Parsons. It is a weird and menacing object, Chase agreed, more like some conception of Poe's or Doré's than any work of wholesome Mother Nature. To inspire fear and loathing in human beings appeared to be the tree's sole purpose. They always seemed to have been arrested in the midst of some uncouth antics, brandishing daggers like a juggler. An affront to aesthetics, to hope and reason, nature, heaven and earth. No doubt many felt inspired to uplift creation by felling entire forests of such offensive trees. In their fate, in their fall, they serve mankind better than in life, Lou V. Chapin surmised in 1894. But such passions proved both futile and fatal in the Mojave, where the mercury often shattered the temperature scales and ravens sometimes dropped dead from the sky. The cool of rain arrived about as often as steamboats bound for the harems of Palmyra, Syria. Instead, most pursued revenge via prose. A misshapen pirate with belt, boots, hands, and teeth stuck full of daggers is as near as I can come to a human analogy. The fact that the trees often stood in human outline failed to ingratiate them further with travelers. At dusk, the twisted freaks of the plant world stood out in silhouette on the fossil wasteland like some arthritic nightmare. All early accounts of the tree note their eerie anthropomorphic form, the human-like shadow, the perverse grace with which these pirates, scarecrows, and criminals stand stranded in tortured frenzy, dressed in beggar rags, with suppliant hands thrown heavenward. They call to mind those enchanted forests of the Inferno, whose trees were human creatures in torment. It is one thing for a plant to offer no apparent practical use to a forlorn traveler. It is another to stand there, towering and defiant over burning sand in the guise of a human being, and with outstretched arms offer no help beyond a bouquet of brittle bayonets. They are grim, twisted desert trees, incredibly old. They look like repentant souls in pain, but technically they are members of the lily family. In a desert itself synonymous with waste and death, the sagebrush, creosote, and burrow bush might well be forgiven for withholding succor. But what of Yucca brevifolia, that technically large evergreen, erect, arborescent monocot? To the early pioneer, perhaps lying prone in the dirt, disgusted and exhausted, out of water and out of hope, there must have been few things so disturbing as observing one's own likeness leering above in silhouette before a vault of blue sky. Wild-looking shrubs leaned out overhead and stared down at us with startled air. There would have been something maddening and, after a time, malevolent in that shape, which corresponds to your own, and yet hovers untroubled above you. It holds out no hand. At the crest of a long rise, we looked out over another great plain, studded with stricken figures of floating yucca palms, which spread to the horizon, a ghastly pretense of forests. In the shimmer of heat, they seemed to claw the air. It's a real quote. These are all real quotes. Ugly, fetid, and utterly useless, ominous, and occasionally cruel, Yucca brevifolia found few defenders. Never have I paused to consider an object less harmonious in carriage, nor more hospitable to refute the benevolent hand of creation. Humwi Chawa, if it was indeed a bridge, as the ethnographers claimed, the Kauai somehow believed, it would be a bridge toward progress to see it toppled. The Los Angeles magazine, Land of Sunshine, in 1894, exhorted men of courage and enterprise not to give up, but to set their tent or shack in the wilderness and reclaim it, bring water from the mountains, plant orchards and apricots, and fall the parched nature of those demoniacal specters of the plain. The hiss and pop of their burning logs would gladden many a humble fireside, the magazine theorized. In a few years, under the magic of man's hand, the desert will have lost half its meaning in Southern California. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's a really tough thing to read from. It's sampling hundreds of different found quotes from tons of forgotten texts woven together in a totally new history of the Mojave Desert in Los Angeles. And what the book gets to, which is really interesting, nobody knows this. This is what actually made me write it. What happened with the Joshua Tree is they started chopping down all the trees and turning them into paper. Nobody knows this. They built mills all over the Mojave Desert. They were mowing them down. They had a Chinese army dragging all the Joshua trees near Acton in the town of Ravenna, boiling them into pulp. And what's crazy is this was happening at the exact same time that LA was the fastest growing city in the history of the world. And it immediately became the most advertised city, the most advertised thing in the history of Earth. So what did they need? They needed paper. And so right as they're mowing down these demonic figures in the outskirts of Los Angeles that are not really corresponding with the desired picture of paradise, they're being fed to the wood chippers to create pamphlets to advertise oranges, sunshine, and climate. And what this book eventually gets to, it's a book about climate change. But yeah, it's going to go extinct from climate change. Yeah. Do you guys want to ask me any questions? Q&A? Yeah. What was that? What about it? Yeah, I mean, the very first tree that they chopped down to turn it into paper was a towering like 6-story behemoth. It was a 1,000-year-old tree. It was the biggest known Joshua tree, and to celebrate this empire of paper that they were going to create, they cut down the largest known Joshua tree. It's interesting trivia. Nobody knows that. Yeah, great question. Thanks, Mom. Yes, sir. Nick, it's great to see you, Nick. One big coincidence? One of the things that really tripped me out was the coincidence I just mentioned of the destruction of the Joshua Tree corresponding with the growth of Southern California and needing more paper than anything. But yeah, the really trippy coincidence. Another one was, I'm talking about Bridge, Homichawa. They call the tree a bridge. The book eventually builds to a crazy section where the largest landfill in the world is known as Puente Hill. It's a landfill that's like 100 feet taller than City Hall over there. No one knows it exists. It's in the center of LA. It's a man-made mountain. It's the largest landfill on Earth. It's bigger than City Hall over there. It's called Puente Hill. When LA was expanding to Lancaster, Palmdale, all these undesirable kind of bedroom communities, Victorville, they were chopping all the Joshua trees down. They were taken to Puente Hill and buried in the dirt, covered with dirt. And so while the Joshua tree has never done anything productive for anybody, what it is doing today is slowly rotting in the earth. And they capture the methane at Puente Hill, the largest landfill in the world, to generate power for 50,000 homes per year. So we can thank the Joshua tree today for powering 50,000 homes as it rots in the earth at Puente Hill. And Puente in Spanish means bridge. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Anybody else? Yes? Oh, sir, yes.
How many years were they producing paper from it before they figured they couldn't do it anymore?
That's a great question. Yeah, the paper. It was funded by a company out of London called the Pacific Atlantic Fiber Company. And they thought they were going to make tons of money, but the Joshua tree, the fibers were too spongy, they were too sticky and elastic. So this great idea went up in smoke and died after about like 3 or 4 years. It was way too difficult to take the spongy, fibrous wood and actually turn it into paper. So company lost money, it didn't work, but they were producing paper for a while. Yeah, I don't know exactly how long. They're endangered. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Jill. What was that? The cover art. I collect rare books, vintage books, first editions. I really like first editions from the 1960s. I have a few old editions of early hardbacks discussing the Mojave Desert. I had a vision in mind for something between a 1960s vintage cover and a 1920s Death Valley travel manual. And yeah, it was designed by a friend of mine, Christina's, who I sent a bunch of art to, and she somehow cobbled it together. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
What can we all do here, all of us, to try to get you on Jimmy Kimmel? Is there some kind of a campaign?
No. Anybody else? I'd love to talk to you if you want any books signed.
What's your next book?
The next book is good. I've been working on it for way too long. It's about the largest nuclear meltdown in United States history. Yeah, it happened in Los Angeles. It's thought to have released 400 times more radiation than 3 Mile Island in 1979. It's at the end of the San Fernando Valley. No one's ever heard of it. It's probably killed hundreds of people. I've uncovered some totally wild material out there. I've been working on it for years. This book has ruined my life. But yeah, it's about the Santa Susana Field Laboratory broadly. Yeah. Thanks. It's really weird, yeah. It's weird stuff. All right. Cool.
My name's Joey, big fan. At what age did you know you wanted to become a writer? And at what age did you realize you were damn good at it?
I wanted to become a writer when I was about 17, and then I realized it was a mistake tonight. Yeah. Thank you. And I realized I was good at it. I haven't realized that yet, but I'm working on it, buddy. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate the question. Late teens, yeah.
Keep showing up, Barret.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been to Joshua Tree a bunch of times, yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, only a couple hours. Yeah. Anybody else? All right. Thank you guys, that was fun. Audio's not great, but it was fun. Thank you guys.